Hey guys, welcome to Stewarding the Wealth Transfer. It's Larry, and I just want to kind of go through events. What a crazy last 2 weeks we've had. I can't believe all the things that have happened, but I also can't say that I'm surprised. And you might think, well, Larry, you got it wrong. You know, the economy didn't tumble. Oh, really? If you don't believe the economy is not going to tumble, I don't know that there's help there, because we have been given such a huge gift that what I thought for sure was going to happen began to happen, and I thought it would be one continuous event, but there's a gap here. So there's probably like one last chance. So my wife and I had a intense conversation because she's a saver and I'm an investor, and we had to decide how to redeploy what we've got extra, if whatever that means to you. That could be $100, it could be $10,000. I don't know where you're at, but man, I'm telling you, you almost saw the dollar vaporized, and I can't imagine what it was like for the people that were in Japan to watch their currency fell essentially at 15%. It was the biggest drop in the stock market history of Japan. And yet, somehow they pulled it back. They had a horrible Friday, then obviously that leads into a horrible Monday, and then somehow they pulled it back, and then our country worked together. And how that happens is it's called, I think it's PPT, it's something protection team. Gary Gensler is on there, and I saw a couple different channels talking about it. I think the Economic Ninja was talking about it, and then another guy. We live in such a manipulated, we don't have free markets, and I can just see that God's going to take it all down. And so I kind of have a perspective, and I'm not trying to maybe I'm not even trying to be persuasive. I just want to give a perspective, because as I talked to Mark, my writing coach, I began to realize I have to choose my perspective that I'm going to write about how Kim Clement wrote. And when you study the prophetic and you see what's going to happen, they say that history is written by the victors. The victors of history record history. Could you imagine if, as of the 4th of July, a month and a half ago, if Joe Biden would have recorded history from that point going back, how he would have said that America was in the direction that it was heading. And then he's not had a good run since the 4th of July. Maybe you're saying, well, it was obvious before that. The thing is, it depends what perspective you're going to take. There's some horrible things that are going to happen here. And I've seen things, in my own prophetic experience. I've talked about how I woke up one morning and I heard stock market crash, and I knew it just meant, far worse than what we only had, a little 3% correction. For the dinar to come about, the Dow's going to drop by 50%. That's just what's going to happen, and possibly farther, and then it will come back up, and it will be great times. We are about ready to go through some horrific things, and in some ways you just have to look around the world. The devil doesn't have that many playbooks. What's going on in the UK is going to come here. I've seen the fighting. I've seen it in my spirit. I've seen it in my dreams. It's going to come here, and I think that's why we're going to have such a perspective of, historians are going to say August was horrible, because something's going to happen here. But I don't want to tell you my perspective from what historians, because if Joe Biden wrote history, as of the beginning of July, it'd be a way different history. And if Trump wrote history right now, well, he hasn't won yet. I think he's winning. I think he's chosen of God. I think things are going to go his way. But our country is going to go through some tremendous things. But I'm just going to share my perspective. I've been confronted with the reality that I can tell you about all the bad things. And like there's a saying in media, if it bleeds, it leads. And that seems like the way that we've gotten used to in our culture, that America is like, if it's a horrible thing, that's what you want to talk about. If it bleeds, it leads. But the thing is, I think God is so excited about where we're going, and yet it's a radically different story. And I as I wrestle with what is going to happen, let's talk about this, because we're not conscripted into this army. We don't have to fight. The church does not have to engage in the battle of the kingdom of God that's coming now. You essentially are a volunteer, and it's so weird because like a great example of what's going on in history right now is God saying, hey, who's got faith? Who wants to believe the prophets? Who wants to be a part of great exploits? Because there's giants up on the hill that need to be taken care of. And I'm going to use whoever. I'm going to use just Gideon's 300 men and women, if that's all that want to come, because I don't need everybody to come. But if you want to come, bring your own vehicle, bring your own investment, bring your own, get yourself there, and we are going to win. And I think that what's going to happen is that the few people who show up under the most crazy of conditions, and the people that have crazy wild faith, are going to be so blessed beyond comparison. I don't think this is going to be a middle of the road story. There is going to be the provision of God is going to be laid out for those wild people of faith who believe in the transfer of wealth, and they risk all, and they put it at, I've risked a lot and lost. I think these people are going to risk a lot and win greatly. And I don't know where you're at in the whole continuum. I saw that Marcus addressed this video, and I got people that were, contacting me too. And I don't want to mock you particularly if you were one of the people that sent it to me, but it could have been the same people. But it's like, oh, Larry, I'm so afraid because these people are saying that Dinar's fake. It's so easy to say things are fake. It's so hard to say that things are real. And if you don't have faith for it, then that's fine. You're just not going to win. You're not going to participate. There's no risk. There's no pain. You just get to go along, and it's fine. Me, I don't want to live a life of no risk. I don't want to have, my goal is not no pain. My goal is I want to receive all that God has for me. And I think heaven has got a way different perspective. And I think there's going to be a very small portion of the church that's going to have no regret on the other side of what's coming. And I think heaven is so excited and amazed. And I see these big prophetic voices. And as I read Kim so much, I was talking to my friend Jeff, Pastor Jeff, and I said, Jeff, it's really crazy because it's like I'm reading and inundated and overwhelmed by all the words that Kim Clement had. And as a prophetic person, I began to be energized, and I can't tell, it's a weird thing, but you get energized and you get influenced, and it's like a cross-pollination. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but you can begin to think that those words are your own. They're not my words. They're Kim's words. God gave them to Kim. But you begin to buzz with them. They begin to, enliven you, and you can begin to, I don't know. So I could talk about all the bad things, which I think so many people, including Tony, are doing, just talking about the horrible things. Oh, it's going to be so bad. He talks about how Trump can't even handle it, and it'll just be so awful. Well, I could either tell you all the bad things that are going to happen. I will tell you this. The really bad things are going to be done at the end of October. There's no doubt in my mind. It's just going to come to a hard stop. The trauma is over. The pandemonium is over. It's less than 100 days away. And so put your seatbelt on, Skippy, because the next, less than 3 months are going to be crazy. But then after that, we're going to be in recovery. But heaven is excited about what's coming, and for so many reasons. What would make you more excited? To be really rich or have an open heaven and just have the grace of God come down, and for everywhere you go proclaiming the goodness of God, people are getting saved. And how would you like to see a second Jesus people movement when people by the millions and millions are just getting saved and they just begin to take over culture? And everywhere we go, there's a new music, there's a new sound that's going to be so impactful. It's going to restore people's souls, and they're going to begin to impact Hollywood, and the evil, gross, horrible stuff in Hollywood is going to be flushed down the toilet where it belongs. And we're going to have a new amazing time of outreach and provision. And the people of God and the voices of God are going to be elevated. And the pathetic voices of Christianity that aren't real, that aren't holy, that aren't righteous, they're going to be flushed away as well. Is that going to be good? People look like, oh, it's going to be so bad because we're never going to be the America that we were. You know, for a time, we're not. Economically, we're going in, for most people, a really hard time. But you know what? For those that have faith, you're going to enter the best. And it's weird. You know, talk about the 1%. There's going to be less than the 1% of the 1% that are going to experience so much faith, so much blessing. You're going to feel bad because everybody else is going to be having a horrible time, and yet you're going to be experiencing the best time ever. And that's not the best time to be having the best time, but you're going to be able to enjoy the favor, the outpouring of God, and you're going to be able to see it from a different perspective. And God is going to grant you influence and wealth, and you need to steward it well. You need to steward the wealth transfer. But as we are the victors, as heaven is the victor, it's going to be a tremendous time. The systems of this world are going to be stripped away. The system of debt and oppression. And, you know, there's three things that Kim talks about that God hates. He hates secularism, he hates socialism, and he hates debt. And those three things in the next couple of years are going to be ripped out by their roots. And I believe in 2025, we're going to experience a freedom from debt. And I believe it's going to come in July. And, you know, it's really interesting how there's this huge overlap. And we're a prophetic channel, but I'm also a patriot. And I don't try to mix the two together, but I watch Johnny Enlow, and he's wrestling with the same things. The Patriots don't have everything wrong. And this thing that's the 17th letter in the alphabet talks about Christmas in July. Well, I don't believe we're on the wrong calendar. I mean, I'm not saying the calendar can't change, but Kim is very consistent. And one of the things I'm amazed at as I keep reading and studying and poring over what he says, he's got prophecies for over 30 years in his database, and I don't see them conflicting. I see them spoken from a different perspective, and their future events, 30 years, 25 years, 22 years, 18 years, 16 years away, they're looking at the same thing, yet they don't seem to conflict. And it's almost like the Bible. And I'm not trying to equate his words with the Bible, but I do believe the same spirit that carried the prophets along who wrote the Bible over, you know, I think there was 42 writers over 1,600 years wrote the two testaments of the Bible. And I think God carried Kim along and gave him a perspective. And I don't see conflicts. And I think it's so shocking how much his words kind of come together. And I see that there's going to be a time when our debts are taken away. And I think it's going to be July next year. And I think until that point, I think that things are going to really slip. And I think it's going to be really trying. But for those of us who invest now, I think that we're going to receive big rewards. And, you know, it's really weird. There's people in the church. I'm just going to kind of go there and just tell you what I think. And, you know, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm fine. I'm just telling you what I think. I'm not telling you what I know. But there's a lot of people that are people of faith who just believe there's going to be great money that comes and you don't have to do anything for it. God's just going to give it to you. Yeah, well, I think that's going to come in July of 2025. And whether you do anything or not, I think that there's going to be money that comes in. But I think for those of us who will put our things at risk, there's going to be far greater rewards. And so you might be going, well, Larry, that's so easy for you to say, sitting there in your chair with those two tough dogs you've got there, Larry. And, it's just got to be so. No, it's not fun. I mean, my proceeds from silver, went way backwards, and I'm losing money every day in my crypto, and I'm, way behind. There was a point, in the spring that I was up on my crypto, but my account's worth way less, half what it was at that point. And, you might be one of the lucky people who's just doing great. Am I all worried about that? No, I'm not, because I expected it to go down. What's really weird is the people who I enjoyed the most, like Drew Wyatt and Mackenzie Praise or whatever his name was, and then that lady named Bram P. Those are three people who are no longer having a voice, but I think that they had visions and dreams that speak exactly to this time. And so we are going to see everything shaken, and then the corrupt people are going to be taken out. And once they're taken out, I mean, everything is going to fall down, and it's when there's margin calls, and there's truly margin calls, everything is going to shrink for a minute. Am I going to wait until that time to jump in? And how come you're not freaking out, Larry, if your crypto's going down? Because I know it's got to go down, and I don't know how to do it any better. It's the balance of, I know it's absolutely going to skyrocket. Let's just put numbers on it. I mean, the lowest XRP is going to go to is $1,000. I think it'll go way past 10,000. Right now, it's like 45 cents or 49 cents. Do I sell at 49 cents because I might be able to buy it at 35 cents? Well, I don't have enough confidence to do that. I don't sell my XRP. In fact, I paid over $1 for my XRP. I've shared that. And so I buy other things that I have heard prophetic voices say are going to go. And those other things, the meme cryptos essentially, are coming down a little bit. And did Kim Clement prophesy about it? No, he didn't. But I believe valid prophetic voices did. I mean, Kim prophesied about XRP. I don't know of any other crypto that he prophesied about. I'm holding my XRP. I'm only going to increase my XRP. I'm investing in the 8 wells, the first 4, as I know, and I'm learning that there's more things. I see Zion Oil and Gas. That's not one of the 8 wells. I absolutely believe, and it talks about, and Kim, when he talks about Zion Oil and Gas, he's talking about January and the new year, and then he goes, you know what, I can't tell if this is the new year of the Israel calendar or of essentially the calendar that we have. I think it will be that as oil is poured out on the people of Israel, which I can see is going to be January of 2025, and the Muslims and the Jews and even America is going to have a huge outpouring. I think that's when the oil of Zion Oil and Gas is going to come. And then I see another investment. I see a combination, as I've looked, about Ford. Kim Clement prophesied that Ford is going to hit $28, and that's never happened since he prophesied. In fact, it's way down from then. And I think Ford is going to get crushed, and they're going to combine, it seems like, with maybe a Japanese company, maybe Toyota, I don't know, in the spring. And Kim talks about how the Middle East is going to be so sad because they're going to watch American car companies rise up again. And I think that's next year. It could be the year after that. But we are going to go through a very difficult time. I think there's no doubt in my mind that we're going to have a very difficult time around Christmas and Thanksgiving economically. But what would you trade economically for absolutely perfect spiritual conditions that far exceed what we've ever even been able to fathom? Kim makes it very clear, even the people of the upper room look forward as part of the cloud of witnesses. They look forward to what we get to experience. Heaven is anticipating what we're going to get to partake in. And we can go run and partake of the glory of God that's going to be poured out. So I think it's a fantastic trade. Let me have less money and go get to be a part of the glory of God. But you know what? It doesn't have to be that way. If you've got faith and you invest, you can, on the front side of when everybody's going to receive, which I believe will be the summer of next year. I think Christmas is going to come next July. Debt is going to be removed. It's going to be horrible. All kinds of people are going to walk away because they're not going to have faith. It's going to get so dark. But do I want to talk about and emphasize what's going to happen from the 1% of the 1% and tell you the truth that we who have ears to hear what God is saying and are in the Spirit are going to rise in influence? We are going to have the best time ever. And Kim consistently talks about it's going to be the best of all times. Church, you're not going to believe it. The true church is going to rise up. We're going to see miracles beyond Catherine Kuhlman and all these other things during the Great Awakening, back early in our country's history. We're going to get to experience the best of times, yet, and it's sad to say it this way, but all the people who didn't have faith, who don't have ears, they're going to be in a really difficult time. But we're called to reach out and to be the true church and help them. And the true church will rise up and will gain influence, and things are going to change. I mean, I saw today where Kim's talking about the government is going to be cut. So there's going to come a time, I believe it's even at the end of this year, where the cut in government is going to be huge. And I saw the weirdest thing that when there's the prophecy of the two presidents, it talks about in the spring, but it also talks about elections. And I thought, man, I really thought for sure, and you might even be able to look up where I said, obviously, there's going to be insight about how there's two presidents, but it really hasn't come true yet. The news has not talked about it. And yet it talks about in the context of the future elections are going to be safe. Don't worry about it. And this is also a patriot thing. I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm really beginning to believe that we're not going to have a presidential election in November. And I'm seeing that on Patriot channels. But I mean, are you think, I'd never even heard of the guy. I couldn't have told you who the governor of Minnesota was. I think it's Minnesota. I don't think it's Michigan. I think it's Minnesota. I couldn't have told you who that guy was before Kamala chose him. I don't believe that Kamala chose him. So we've got the worst presidential candidate in the history in the last 2 decades of the Democratic Party, and then she chooses somebody who's really engaged in politics doesn't even know about, and we think that they're a valid contender. But I'll tell you, I live in Washington, the home of the motor voter universe, and I can't believe how our state elections came out yesterday, because I remember in 2020 what percentage of people in different areas voted for Trump, and I don't think that Trump is in worse shape than he was then. I think he's in far better shape. And yet the people who when Trump is on the ticket, we're going to be able to see what the real thing is, because there's huge discrepancies in our state executive races about some Republicans do quite well and others do horribly. And I just don't believe it's right yet. I think we have the same problems that have plagued Arizona and plagued Colorado and plagued Washington and Oregon and, this whole Dominion thing. It's a big mess. That's why I think that God is showing us what's going on in Venezuela. I think things are going to, become clear. So I didn't really say anything. I'm just saying it's a time to double down. If you have any extra, it's a time to hold on, to know that we are going to suffer temporarily financially. And I think the huge increase may come, a lot of it later, but you can't not be in, cryptocurrencies right now. And I would encourage you. So I will tell you that I do have some liquidity in my crypto accounts, because I do think that prices are going to continue to get lower. And I've got purchases, with that cash that I've got, that's probably 25% of my crypto investment, I've got 25% sitting on the sidelines, and as key things like XLM and XRP come down, I'm going to be moving into them at a lower price. But I'm just content to know it's going to go down because it's going to go up. And I'm not worried about it. And I believe Kim completely and repeatedly talks about how the elections are going to turn out fine. He talks about don't worry about it. So I do think about it, but I'm not worried about it. But I don't know if the presidential elections, I think the elections are going to show a lot of evil, but I'm now realizing I don't know if the elections are going to be. And we'll see on that. And I know it's messy. I'm combining patriot and prophetic things, but even the prophets it's so easy to talk about the things that are catastrophic. And I've decided that as I write and even as I talk on this channel, I'm not going to tell you about and overemphasize the things that are bad, because I believe that America's best days are ahead. And I believe, I'm going to really kind of go there and just tell you this. I don't believe that God is so weak that the devil and the Antichrist are going to take over, and that the pathetic church needs to be rescued by Jesus because there's no power in the cross and that we're just the weakest people. I don't think that. I see promises for Israel to be elevated. I see provision for Israel. I see the kingdom of God is going to come at a new height and new blessings. And I think that there's blessings of Habakkuk and some of the biblical prophets, the Old Testament prophets, foresaw a time of blessing in Jerusalem that has not yet been realized. And so I'm going to side with the prophets, and I'm going to believe. I remember when Cheon said, and my brother and I were there, and I heard him say, and this is an interesting thing to say, he said, hey, don't worry about Jesus coming this week. He's not going to come this week. And my brother talked about that. We talked about that quite a bit because we've been raised to think that Jesus could come, at any moment. And if he does, and I'm wrong on this, it's not going to keep me out of heaven, because, I have to. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I think that there's great victory for the kingdom of God that's going to come. And I do think that there is an eventual rapture, and I do think that there will be an eventual Antichrist. And I think that we are competing, and there is a spirit of Antichrist. And yes, we are in the end days because the Holy Spirit has been poured out. But these are not the end of the end days. These are the beginning of the end days. And there's times, I believe, of great prosperity. And I think heaven is excited about what's coming our way. And God is removing the evil systems of this world. And we should have heaven's perspective. And we shouldn't be in fear. We should be excited. And I believe those who will believe the prophets are going to be blessed. And I don't care if people don't believe it. I had a guy that wanted to argue with me. He came on the channel. And in fact, I'm going to say this. My website, I almost got it fixed, and then that didn't work out. So my website is still not fixed. And some of you try to reach out through the website. And, I don't do Facebook hardly ever. And, because I'm not perfect and I don't have time to do everything that there is. And, I could spend a lot of time, reaching out and talking to people, but it's an interesting thing when people want to talk to you that you don't know. And I don't, I'm curious, but I don't know what to do with that. So if you want to talk to me, I do read all the comments. And about 1 out of 100 people have such stupid comments, they just don't get to comment anymore. I think they can comment and think that people see them, but they just don't get seen. So that's what happens if you're really stupid. Marcus told me he does it pretty often, a lot more than 1 in 100, but I've done it a couple times because I get tired of people. I had a guy said, it's just not biblical to eat the way that you're eating, talking about this carnivore. He said, you need to have more of a Mediterranean diet. That's the biblical way. And I thought, you know what? you're gone. You're one of my bottom 5%, so I'll see you later. But we live in great times. We're going to see an outpouring of the glory of God. We are going to have shaking that's coming, but those of you who have faith, I just want to encourage you. And you can't control what's going to happen. You just have to have faith. But so here's what I think are going to be the indicators. I had talked about how David Wilkerson had said it's going to start in Japan and it's going to go to Europe. And Kim Clement said very clearly Europe is going to take a haircut and that's going to temporarily strengthen the US dollar. I think that's the next thing. I think you're going to see everything fall in Europe. And then he and, I forgot the guy's name, the silver bearded guy, John... I can't remember his name. He said that it's going to crash, the euro's going to crash, and then America's going to crash, and we are going to have a crash. And if you don't think so, I'm going to kind of wade probably where I shouldn't wade, but I just want to talk about the possibility of something. I'm going to tell you that the three probably most cabal funding sources are BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. And I know so many Christians who are so invested in Vanguard mutual funds. And you think if that is a cabal-owned entity, do you think that God is going to protect? If you invest in demonic with ungodly cabal investments, you think that your money's going to do well? I've had just candid conversations with my friends. Why in the world would you invest with those guys? They do not have the good of America. I mean, Elon Musk is suing them because they control funds, and he has a neutral, libertarian, truth-oriented perspective, and they're not allowing any money to go to him, so he's suing them. And Trump is suing some of these cabal things. They're not, I don't know them suing those three companies, but those three companies, I got an offer one time on a really competitive rate for refinancing my self-storage from State Street, and I almost did it. And I'm so glad I didn't, because I don't want to do anything that directly supports that level of evil. But if you have your money there and you think it's going to be fine on the other side of this, you just have a way different perspective than I do. I don't know how godly people can invest with evil people and think that God is going to protect your money. That's my little, 2 bits there. So I think you need to protect your money outside of the fiat system. I think our stock market is going to go down. Our currency is going to go down. And, you say, well, Larry, give me one empirical thing. Well, I think that Project 2025 is an amazing thing that you should look at. And Project 2025 lists almost every government entity and what a conservative leader should do. And it's a roadmap to get back to the Constitution. And the left was absolutely losing its mind over it because it makes so much sense. And everything that I believe, this is my opinion, I believe that Project 2025 is a roadmap. Donald Trump has not said, I loved Project 2025. In fact, he even said, there's a few things I really don't like about it. Well, he didn't say what it was, but what's he supposed to say? His side is presenting it. It's a great constitutional roadmap of how to get us back to the Constitution. We have bureaucrats that are not elected, that whether it's Democrat or Republican, all these people stay in the middle and they control us. And they make these rules. And the Chevron deference case is going a rule against that bureaucracy. That's the epitome of bureaucracy. And Project 2025 is going to slice bureaucracy. It's draining the swamp. It's literally draining the swamp. And you don't see mention of the IRS in Project 2025. You see it referenced in the Treasury, But there is no Federal Reserve in Project 2025 because I don't think the Federal Reserve exists. And I don't think the IRS exists on the other side of this. I think the IRS days are over. And some of you get all wound up and talk to me about, oh, Larry, you got to have all these trusts. I think trusts are great things when you want to convey resources to kids or minors who don't have proper control. But I don't know how you use a trust right now if you have dinar money or these other things and you are all worried about trust, then that means that you believe that the IRS is going to continue to exist and thrive. And if you believe that, you've got to be so worried about the future. I don't really worry about, paying the taxes I have to pay. I mean, Jesus said, give to Caesar what's to Caesar and to God's what's God's. And I do pay, we pay a 6-digit amount of taxes. But I'm glad that I get to do it, and I can't wait till I don't have to. That's what I would say. But God is going to bless us. I don't think the IRS is going to control us. I don't think the Federal Reserve. I think we're absolutely, in fact, Project 2025 talks about going back to a gold-backed currency. And I think that's absolutely where we're going to go. So I think you got a few more days, a few more weeks until this thing rolls up. And I think the dinar it's going to seem like 1929, like we just totally go down in flames. And I do think the dinar is going to bring relief. I think it's going to help. Actually, it's really weird. It doesn't say that it will help Europe, but somehow the UK and America are going to, it's not going to be nearly as bad as what we thought it would be. But then I do think that the US currency is going to be in a very difficult time at the end of the year. And Kim talks about how during Thanksgiving, we're going to be so thankful, but people are going to say, but we have nothing to be thankful about. So I think economically, it's going to be horrible. But those of us who have invested in the wealth transfer are going to be doing fantastic. And the victors get to write history. You get to choose your own history. You get to show up for war if you want to show up for war. Or if you want to be chicken and you don't want to be fighting, you don't want to take a stand, then go ahead and do that. I'm going to take a stand. I'm going to be loud. I want to be loud and proud for the kingdom of God. I don't want to be shy. I don't care if people don't like it. I don't want to not participate in everything that God's got for me. So I hope that you guys have a good week. I mean, this is kind of a rambling thing. I'll try to cut it down. But things are going to get rough. But things are going to be awesome. The kingdom of God is going to be revealed. We are going to be able to take back the mountains. There's giants in the land. I, for one, I want to be like Caleb. Even though I'm getting old, I want to go up and I want to take possession and I want to have a battle and I want to possess the land. And I want to encourage as many of you who want to go with us to come with us. Men and women, married and single. I can't wait. So, you guys have a good one. Bye.